Fate Entertainment.
Up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of State of the Jungle presented by First Star Logistics, live from the First Star Logistics studio right here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, as always. We got the returning Evan McPhillips. He's feeling a lot better today. We've got Lolo joining us on the show. And, there's a lot to get into today. There's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, a lot of conversations to be had, a lot of questions to be answered. But before we do, make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate all the support that we've been getting. We're trying to, move up further and further with our subscribers here on the show, but we appreciate y'all so much. Next week is going to be a really, 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 really busy week. Headed to Arizona for the Super Bowl, right? To watch the Eagles take on those dirty Kansas City Chiefs. I'm kidding. But I'm looking forward to covering it. It's our game's highest stage. Lots to talk about today. Lots to get into. But before we get into the conversation, let's start over in Tampa.
Yeah.
The GOAT Tom Brady retired this morning, boys. And I got to get your opinions on it. I know some people are like, we cannot stand Tom Brady. We don't care for him, blah, 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 blah. But I feel a little bit different, man. It's going to be weird watching football, Brady-less NFL football. It's going to be weird. So, Evan, I'm sure you have a lot to say about it. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Before we get into the Bengals talk, because this is a Bengals show, we've got to acknowledge the greatest quarterback of all time retiring. Ev?
Right. It feels like we've already prepared ourselves for this, right? So as much as anybody can feel shocked, I guess, if you want to feel like that, or if you want to feel despondent at the end of an era, then like you're entitled to feel that way. But we kind of went through all that last year, and I think a lot of people were mentally prepared for him to take that step, especially seeing how he played this year, looking like he really didn't want to take on contact. Just the situation was getting a little bit contentious, and it just didn't work out well for them. And I think a lot of people probably foresaw that he might take that step away. I know there was talk maybe he'd end up in San Francisco, or he'd end up somewhere else where, he could maybe have the weapons and have a chance to compete right away. But I think that was probably equal parts chance as him walking away. So obviously, like you said, greatest of all time. That's really hard to argue against. And it's definitely the end of an era, but like I said, we kind of all did the song and dance last season. So, it's the retirement tour already happened. So, there it is. It's final, it's official. And, it probably would have been the perfect chef's kiss to the end of his career to retire a year or two ago. But at least he finally got to get that, last effort out and know for sure that, hey, I'm done and I'm walking away on my terms. And at least I tried. So, credit to him, and, happy retirement to the GOAT.
Lo, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady's been playing in the NFL longer than I've been alive. So, it's gonna be a little different. The NFL is gonna be a little different without Tom. And obviously, we don't need to sit up here and talk about how great he is. He's phenomenal. But him going to Tampa Bay at first was perceived a lot of different ways. But I think, at the end of the day, it really helped him, because I think it allowed him to show off his personality more, let him be a little more personable when you didn't really see that
Right.
in New England. And I think, there's a lot of reasons behind it. But just regardless, you got to see more of Tom Brady, and I think that really helped people kind of appreciate him more. And, I'm glad he did it because, like you said, not everybody's Tom Brady's biggest fan, believe it or not. But I'm glad his career played out the way he did. Obviously, you'd like him go out on a little bit more of a high note than barely squeaking the playoffs, losing the Cowboys, whatever. But we all know how great he is, and it's just gonna be weird without him.
I think he needed to. Leave New England.
Oh yeah,
It showed a whole different,
yeah.
side of his personality.
Awesome.
Same thing with Mac Jones. Daniel had the opportunity. For those of you who don't know Daniel, Daniel's the guy running my best friend. He's running the cameras and all that kind of stuff. He used to be a Patriots fan growing up, so I'm going to give him a chance to talk about the impact Tom Brady had on the game and things of that nature. But no, in all seriousness, I think a lot of quarterbacks, a lot of players aren't able to show their personality when you play for a coach like Bill Belichick. Yeah. That is no fault of Bill Belichick. He is who he is. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach of the modern day era of football. I just think that it was cool to see Tom Brady go somewhere, be able to show his personality and show that he could still win somewhere else. Props to Brady. To me, I don't know how you could dislike the guy, especially come after you just saw what he did in Tampa. The guy has proven that he's a workhorse, right? And he could truly change an organization around for the better. But Daniel, we're gonna shut up. You grew up a Patriots fan.
I did.
You watched TB12. You watched the GOAT week to week to week to week. How does this make you feel, man? You seemed like you were getting a little teary-eyed earlier when we were in Kev's office and we were talking about it.
Oh, definitely. But before I get to what I'm going to say, Travis said, thank you, Logan, for making me feel old. Evan's expression looked like he felt the same way with that comment of Brady's career.
I tried to hide it.
So, yeah, man. I mean, like, it's the same thing. As long as I've been alive, I've known Tom Brady. And for me, I mean, I grew up a Patriots fan, and it was always, like, expected. It was greatness. It's, you were expected to be great. And once he left, honestly, New England, that's when I learned to appreciate him more. Even being a Patriots fan, I was like, okay, he left and we saw the year that the Patriots had. We saw that the greatness wasn't expected as much as when Tom Brady was there. And also when he went to the Buccaneers, we saw people start to look at him as, oh, crap, he's not just a robot. Oh, crap, he's not just the GOAT. So I was honestly really happy that even as a Patriots fan, former Patriots fan, that he left.
Put a capital on the former Patriots fan. I've successfully converted you to a Bengals fan. There we go.
You have. And I looked at that and I was like, I'm glad that he got that added push at the end of his career. And I'm also glad that he won without Bill Belichick, because that showed that he was able to do it without Bill. So
Bill Blicky.
I'm happy for Brady, and I'm glad that he went out, even though not on top, he still won a ring without Belichick. So.
Hey, I don't know. I saw the supermodel girlfriend he apparently has on Twitter. I think he went out pretty good.
Yeah, he's not missing Giselle. Looks like.
Yeah, it does not seem like he's missing Giselle too much. But we're gonna keep the conversation rolling. We got to talk about our Bengals now.
Yep.
I set up on this show after I got back from Kansas City, and I did a show and we talked about it. There are a lot of people out there that say the NFL is rigged. The NFL didn't want the Bengals in the Super Bowl in the big dance. Before I say what I got to say, Lolo, we're going to kick this over to you. We're going to let you talk. I want to get what your take is. Let's go.
Man, I like just flat out, I don't think the NFL is rigged. Like the script and all this and that, I don't believe in that. And even though that's, just imagine if it is real. Like imagine that being your job. The script writer in the NFL, like that's a really fun job. You just control everything in the world. But regardless, I mean, again, I don't think it's rigged, but there was a lot of just weird things going on in that football game. And I don't want to say it's rigged just because that just ruins everything. It makes the game less fun. Everything about it just makes it worse. But I mean, it was weird. You've seen one of the least penalized teams in the NFL over 2 years have penalty after penalty after penalty. You've seen some questionable calls, some questionable no calls. You see Patrick Mahomes do one thing, Joe Burrow does the same thing, and he gets penalized. It didn't feel good, but regardless, at the end of the day, the Bengals still had an opportunity to win the game. But it was just strange. Like, even being there, like, everything just felt weird. Like, the game was just, like, it was just really weird. Like, I don't know any other way to express it. It didn't feel like you could appreciate the game as much as you wanted to, because you were always just looking for the flag or the no call or whatever it was. It was just, I kind of really... I don't want to say it ruined the game because it was still a very good football game, but it just, it really took away from the excitement that, Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes can provide to a stadium. I mean, we saw it be the most watched AFC Championship game in a long time, ever. So it's just, it was just an awkward football game. Every team had the opportunity to win it. The refs obviously played a factor, but that is what it is.
Yeah, I obviously anyone that's more than half serious knows the NFL's not rigged. It's just these bounces of the ball that goes a certain way, and you can look at just about any play and say like, "Oh yeah, there was holding on that play and it should have been called." I think the most egregious call was that missed block in the back on the punt return. That's something I can get on board with. That's like, hey, this is a glaring miss. We see these misses, and the Bengals did have a chance to take control of that game and take the win. The defense made a couple of good stands where, I mean, the Chiefs just were on their game where it was 4th and 1. They got a touchdown. It was 3rd and 10 in the red zone outside the 10-yard line, and they got a touchdown. So they were that close to taking 7 points off the board, taking 4 points off the board. And that could have been just a tremendous difference in this game where both defenses were playing really, really well. It definitely felt like a lot of those flags came at very inopportune times for the Bengals, where every time that normally we'd say that was a play where that team just swung the momentum. They just started something right there. They got a spark. Every time one of those plays happened, it seemed like one of those flags started flying. And that was the really demoralizing part of it that I think made it hard for the Bengals kind of get that continuity and get that spark or momentum, for those who don't believe that word to be taboo. So I definitely don't think that the Bengals got the fair shake necessarily. You could see the 9 penalties to 4. Obviously, there was the really egregious call at the block in the back. There was the missed call on the roughing the passer that Joe Burrow got knocked down after releasing the ball 3 seconds beforehand. So again, I'm not saying that the NFL doesn't have preferences on who they'd like to win games. I'm not saying that these refs are infallible or didn't make mistakes. We saw a couple of mistakes where, we've had playoff games where pass interference didn't get called, and just on blatant plays that decide the game. I mean, it happens. It sucks. It's unfortunate. If the O-line wasn't down 3 people, it maybe doesn't even matter at any point. So, I mean, it's really crappy. And that's kind of the way they got the raw end of the stick, man. And that's really unfortunate.
So Chris asks, where did the big Vegas money go, Kansas City or Cincy? And all that I'm going to say is there is a little bit, a lot of the money, over 70%, was on Cincinnati to win. So Vegas definitely raked in some money with Kansas City winning. So
I think there's something to be said, though, because the spread swung so much throughout there that, a lot of people were probably – go ahead. You got something to say, Malik. Get it off your chest, man. I know. Come on. Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
What you got, Malik?
This reminds me of what happened to my Alabama Crimson Tide earlier this season against Tennessee.
All right.
I'm going to be honest with you.
They allowed like 5 touchdowns to the same guy of over 30 yards. Eventually, you got to defend the guy who's running.
How about the phantom pass interference? How about I'm not saying it's rigged.
I understand.
I'm not saying it's rigged. How about the phantom pass interference call?
Look, I'm not saying
here. Listen, I'm not going to be that guy that says the NFL is rigged, but I'm also not going to be the guy that's oblivious. And none of my counterparts on this show are as well. But I am saying I'm not going to be the guy to say that there isn't some type of influence at times on a game. And I wholeheartedly believe this is the ideal matchup that the league wanted. You get the Kelsey Bowl, you get Andy Reid versus his former team, right? You get all those factors in the game. State Farm Arena, right, is what they call the Arizona. That's what it is in England. It's State Farm Arena. Who is the face of State Farm in the NFL? Used to be Aaron Rodgers. Now it's Pat Mahomes and Big Red Andy Reid. It makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Not trying to go crazy, but what I am saying is I don't think the NFL is rigged. I'm not going to go stoop to that level. But I do think if you play a game close, or if a game is close enough to allow certain calls to be made, those calls can be made. I firmly believe if the Buffalo Bills showed up when we played them in the divisional round and it was a close game, I could have seen penalties go against the Cincinnati Bengals, who, by the way, is one of the least penalized football teams in the NFL. But all of a sudden against the Kansas City Chiefs, they're getting penalized left and right?
Take away a touchdown, too.
They took away a touchdown, and we still mollywopped them. Then we go to KC. All of a sudden, Frank Clark looks like the Frank Clark of old, right? Then you got a guy named Mike Dana that looks good. And you got all these different things, all these different scenarios happen. Listen, I do take issue. Ron Torbert is the same referee that refereed the Super Bowl last year. Okay. When the Bengals took on the Rams, where in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And there was a phantom call against Logan Wilson on a pass interference against Cooper Kupp that should have never been called. And this is the same guy that was the head ref for the Kansas City. Let me tell you what's going to happen, guys. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Next year, the Kansas City Chiefs are more than likely going to open up the season against the Cincinnati Bengals in Arrowhead Stadium, a lot like the Kansas City Chiefs opened up the season this past year against the Buffalo Bills. Wouldn't it be a damn shame if Ron Torbert is the ref for that game as well? Wouldn't it be something? Because I got a funny feeling old Ron might be in Kansas City next year for the first game of the season when the Bengals take on the Chiefs. Again, this is no insider information, but I'm not going to sit up here and say the league does not make things work for them. I'm sorry. I'm not. Sometimes some of this stuff sometimes looks a little rehearsed. Sometimes it's not rigged, but you mean to tell me Tom Brady in his first year with Tampa, when the Super Bowl is where? In Tampa, goes to the Super Bowl?
One bite with ease.
With ease.
31-9.
With ease.
31-9. Patrick Mahomes didn't score a touchdown.
Come on, man. Look. The fact of the matter is, the Bengals spoiled the party. The Bengals are public enemy number one. And isn't it funny? Bad Boys 4 has just been announced. Bad Boys 4 is happening.
Yep.
The Bengals are the bad boys of the NFL. The Bengals pissed off the NFL. Joe Mixon with the coin flip pissed off the NFL. Joe Burrow with the better send them refunds pissed off the NFL. There is a way to say, screw the NFL. Can I let you guys know a little secret?
Sure.
It's about execution. It's about going out there and executing and playing your game. Too many times, the Cincinnati Bengals looked like crap on offense in that game.
Yeah.
In the biggest game. Listen, right now I'm talking to Bengals fans, and I'm talking because I know Chiefs fans are going to say, oh, no, your team did. I'm going to address the Bengals for a second, too. I am. In the biggest game of the year, they reverted back to old ways. One of the biggest issues I had during the Zac Taylor era was the Bengals' inability to score points in the first quarter or score efficiently in the first half.
Yeah.
In the biggest game of the year against a Swiss-ass cheese defense like the Kansas City Chiefs, they reverted back to this. And what do you know? I've sat on this show so many times. I've sat on State of the Jungle so many times. I sat on the Sit Down with Malik Wright so many times. And I said, at some point, football is not about X's and O's. You have to trust your Jimmies and Joes. Mm-hmm. The most explosive plays of the night is when they threw it up to who? T. Higgins, right? When he made his defenders, the two defenders that went on him look like little ass boys.
Yep. And
then Jamar Chase
Both
on a 4th and 6.
Double coverage.
Both in double. Where was that all night? The Chiefs have never been able to cover the Cincinnati Bengals receivers. They've never. Give your guys a chance. It's the biggest game of the year. It's win or go home. The fact of the matter is, we could sit up here and blame the refs all we want. We could say the league had an agenda. All those things can be true while also acknowledging the Bengals did not show up. Had the Bengals that played in the second half played in the first half, guess what? Yeah. We'd be all booking our tickets to Arizona to watch the Cincinnati Bengals take on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
That's a fact, right?
Yep.
But I want to address something before we get to, the Bengals offseason and all this. Kansas City Chiefs fans, hear me out. Hear me out. Daniel, clip this.
I'll clip it.
I have never seen a team embarrass themselves and parade around so much after a victory. Like you don't have enough. Is this your Super Bowl? Was this your Super? I'm genuinely asking. Yeah. Well, I was very respectful. I was very reserved on the show, and I've been. But seeing Frank Clark say, Bengals, take your bum asses back to Cincinnati. Bro, you guys won on a walk-off field goal by Harrison Butker. he's the MVP of the game.
Yeah.
To me, the same storyline existed. You got three, third and nines.
That's crazy.
You controlled the first half like you always have against the Bengals, and you let them back in the second half. And you relied on your kicker, Harrison Butker, to win you the game. Let's not act like, oh, we defended Arrowhead. You were very close to not defending Arrowhead. But again, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Again, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Final number result says Chiefs won 23-20. So I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say this. I have a funny feeling the little song and dance that the Chiefs fans are doing right now won't play over well next season. Remember me saying this, Evan.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be doing the State of the Jungle each and every single, almost each and every single week this offseason as we break down the offseason. We talk about position of values. I'm just going to say this right now. Listen, the way the Chiefs have disrespected this football team, right? And I like to think it was a healthy competition. And usually we feel how we feel about the Steelers. We feel how we feel about the Browns. We feel how we feel about the Ravens. Those are teams in our division, and they have never stooped that low. They have never stooped this low to where I've seen personally. All I'm going to say is hang tight. Hang tight, because the beautiful thing is those teams play each other again, right? Those teams play each other again next year. And more than likely, those teams will play again in the playoffs next year. I'm just going to say this. Joe Burrow is wired completely different. And I'm going to make a statement right now on the show. And you guys might call me crazy. I genuinely do not believe the Cincinnati Bengals will lose to the Chiefs for a long time after this. I genuinely don't. Because this is the same dude that literally ripped my team's Alabama Crimson Tide's heart out and fed it to us. I cannot wait to see the one-on-one interviews that we see Joe Burrow do this office, because I have a funny feeling when they ask, Joe, what game are you looking forward to the most? It won't be the Ravens. It won't be the Steelers. It won't be the Bills. It won't be the Browns. I guarantee you it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. When we say, oh, you must not know who you're dealing with, I genuinely mean that. The disrespect that was shown, the gap between the Chiefs and the Bengals is not that significant. But hear me out, Chiefs fans. Be careful what you wish for. Chiefs organization, be careful what you wish for. Focus on that Super Bowl that you got to go out and win. But I have a funny feeling the taunting, the trash talk, the garbage spewed from your overrated ass defensive end in Frank Clark is going to come back to bite your team. I have a funny feeling it is. I'm not usually wrong about this stuff. I have a funny feeling it's going to come back to bite your team in the ass. And again, I think Ryan Clark said it. Oh, no, it was RG3. Be careful. Don't let your mouth write a check that your ass can't cash, because I have a funny feeling that's what the Chiefs did. Trust me, Chiefs, the same way I said what I said about the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to say it about the Bengals. I have friends on this team, and I know that they took the disrespect personally. I have a funny feeling it's not going to play out the way you guys think it's going to play out next year. But again, long off season, lots of stuff to get into. Can't wait to play you. Good luck against Philly, because you're going to need it. Let's keep the conversation rolling.
Can I tag on a little something real quick
Sure.
from the Kansas City game?
Sure.
We already talked about the game in itself. I just want to talk real quick on a little bit of the fallout and the sky falling aspect that the Bengals fans seem to be having. I understand that it was a big loss and that a lot of people were understandably emotional. It's been a couple days now. Everybody needs to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And relax with all this. This front office has failed this team again and hasn't done enough on the offensive line. All right. They signed 4 new guys. Each of them was capable starters. 3 new guys, and then brought in another one and Cordell Volson through the draft. 3 of those 4 played at average or above average levels. They hit on 3 out of 4. Like, that's great. And there's a reason that the Lyle Collins contract wasn't fully guaranteed or as high as it should have been for a tackle of his age or his caliber hitting the market. You have Jonah Williams, who I know is the bane of the guys. Jonah Williams did not play. Why is everyone so angry at Jonah Williams? I've seen so many people going, cut Jonah today, cut Jonah tomorrow. First of all, if you cut him, you're going
Mhm.
12 million against the cap. You're paying him with no savings just to not be on the team.
Pointless.
Think about just a year ago how you were begging for any decent average tackle on the other side of the line. And now you want to go and cut a guy who, whether you think he's slightly below average, average, or above average, whatever, you want to cut a league average-ish tackle that you're paying $12 million to play left tackle, which, by the way, is the 16th lowest cap hit for any tackle playing left tackle in the upcoming season. So you basically have him on a bargain and he just needs to be average. That's all we ever wanted from all these spots, right? And people seem to be forgetting. And I see people going, I know that since week 5, we were first in rush efficiency. I don't care. We weren't good enough in the run. What are you talking about? You're literally just ignoring the fact that you just acknowledged because you're emotional, because you're angry.
Right.
Like, again, passing. Weeks 5 to 17, they allowed pressure on pass blocking at the 7th lowest rate in the league. They were good enough. They got injured at 3 spots, and these guys are supposed to be good enough to fill in a pinch. They are not supposed to go up against Aaron Donald and Chris Jones, some of the best interior pass rushers that we've seen, and hold up.
Wait, I want to address something. Tree with leaves, since you're the smartest guy in the room and you're a Chiefs fan, and yet and still you say you're focused on the Super Bowl, but yet and still you're on a Bengals shows comment section, weirdo. The simple fact is you're saying Chris Jones is a defensive tackle, not defensive end. Evan's not saying he's a defensive end. He's saying he was lined up at defensive end.
I call
That's
him
what
an
he's
interior
saying.
defender. He moves all over.
He moves all over the place. That's where Steve Spagnuolo plays him, which is why we're addressing it. The simple fact of the matter is
Max Sharpen gave up 9 pressures from the
9
interior.
pressures.
I know he lined up on the edge on key downs,
Yeah.
but the majority of that pressure came from inside, and it was a problem constantly where Joe had to keep rolling out or stepping up into pressure, and it made life hard for him, man. We talked about it before the game. I said multiple times on multiple shows, this Chiefs defense was top 5 since week 10. Chris Jones was winning on a quarter of his reps on the pass blocking, and he was dominant. We said that was coming.
Yeah,
like
we obviously talk, but there's nothing bad we can say about Chris Jones.
God,
He's
no,
great.
he's so
He's
talented.
I would
phenomenal.
love to have a Chris Jones on my
Absolutely.
team.
I
I would
mean,
love to have a Chris
You
Jones
can
on
argue
my
he's a
team.
defensive player of the year. Like,
I
there's
just
no
think
business to sit here and disrespect Chris
Listen,
Jones. Like,
literally.
Don't have
Yeah.
unfair expectations for the offensive line is what I'm trying to get at, guys. Like, you get, again, if there's a decent person out there, you cut Jonah Williams right now, I bet the Bears would throw 18 million at him.
Easily.
Just to say it. We have 90
Maybe
million
20.
in cap
Maybe
space.
20.
That's what I'm saying. They have $90 million in cap space, and they're a bad team that needs any type of talent.
Here's what I'm going to say right now. And I want to leave it at this, and I want to leave the Chiefs in the past because we've beaten them 3 times in 1 year, but I want to say this. I really want to say this. Guys, the Bengals and the Chiefs will trade wins and losses for years, right? That's the well, I think after what happened, I don't see it that way anymore, but these are 2 teams that I think are ultra talented and have proven to be the class of the AFC. Let's not make more of a 3-point victory than we have to. That's all I'm saying, because very quickly it could have turned the other way.
Yeah.
It could have turned the other way. And we could be talking about the Bengals having 4 victories, but we're not. Bengals lost. That's the final end result.
Mhm.
Good luck to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Good luck to the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. We are moving on. We are moving on with our season. Well, with our offseason.
Yes, sir.
We are moving on with this show. We are going to focus now on the offseason. The game happened. The Bengals didn't show up, right? Simple as that. And if that's what you're looking for me to say, I'll say that. I'll be the guy that says that. I'm just going to say I cannot wait. I cannot wait for that matchup next year. I genuinely cannot wait for that matchup next year, because I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of, man. There was something recently that happened in May. I forgot exactly, and it's gonna probably come to me a little bit later when we do talk about it. But I remember there was a flash in the pan, almost Davison Figueiredo beating Brandon Moreno, and everyone thought Davison Figueiredo was just head and shoulders better than him. And then they fought again, and Brandon Moreno absolutely dog walked him, this past time around. And I'm not saying that I'm not gonna say we're gonna dog walk the Kansas City Chiefs, but I'm looking forward to that matchup. It's going to be really, really fun to watch that. And I cannot wait for the state of the jungle leading up to that game, because I'm going to be unbearable. I'm going to talk my ish. I just hope that you join us, Tree with Leaves. And I'm assuming you're subscribed to the channel because you're here every week, brother. And I appreciate the support. Good luck to your team again. But Bengals offseason plans, guys. What does the Bengals offseason plan look like? Now, I got to be real with you guys. Joe Mixon holds a special place in my heart. He does. When I first came out to Cincinnati, he was one of the first people that I interviewed and things of that nature. There seems to be a conversation that is stirring up. Should the Bengals move on from Joe Mixon? I know how some people on this show feel, and I'm looking at my my different colored-eyed co-host, Evan McPhillips. Ev, you want to talk your ish? Go ahead, talk.
Oh man, one of these days we'll just get into a deep dive, particularly on Joe Mixon. But let me just make the general case right now. The point is that guys like Chris Evans or an Isaiah Pacheco make 1/12 of what Joe Mixon makes, and you have to take Joe Mixon off the field on these passing downs because you don't trust him yet in pass protection still. They've showed they favored Samaje Perine with him playing more snaps than Mixon. I mean, it's just, if that's not the writing on the wall, like, I don't know what is, because I understand this guy has leadership and charisma and the locker room loves him and he gives them a lot of energy, but like $12 million is a lot of money to pay for energy. If they need juice, Joe Burrow's got it, right? If they need juice, there's a guy named Juice literally on the other side of the ball in Cam Taylor-Britt. I mean, they have leaders in DJ Reader, in all of these guys, that you have to trust that Joe Mixon moving on is not going to make the locker room crumble, right?
Yeah.
So that's the argument for against the energy, the captain, what have you, right? This team is made up of former team captains, guys like Logan Wilson, right? For that reason. You also talk about the production. When we talk about an offensive run game, right? The coordinator and the play call have to be good. 5 offensive linemen have to be good to not blow their blocks and not blow up the play. And then the running back gets their opportunity to try and make a play. Just in terms of pecking order, the running back is third in that order. So it makes sense to invest in the offensive line, which is expensive and hard to develop, where you have known quantities. You go pay for these guys who you know what they are, and then you draft the running back who you can find in the rounds 4, 5, 6. We see this all the time, that these mid to late round running backs hit. Also, where that running back is really adding their value to the run game. We talked about the play call, the coordinator, the scheme, the offensive line. Once the running back gets their opportunity by eating up those designed yards, the blocked yards, right? The running back adds their extra value and separates themselves from the pack and makes themselves one of those better or elite backs by making tacklers miss, whether being elusive and forcing missed tackles by breaking angles or by Derrick Henrying people and just literally running through them. Whatever your poison is, but consistently Mixon has been in the bottom 10, 20% of running backs in elusive rating. And if you think about it, it seems like even when he gets matched up on defensive backs, even though he's so large and he is so quick in open space, he seems to get shoestring tackled a lot. He doesn't necessarily go through contact as much as you'd expect a guy of his stature to. And it's been something that you've seen year to year to year now. And the efficiency is just not there to where he is showing. If he can't force missed tackles and he can't be out there for pass blocking downs because you're telegraphing too much what you want to do, then you have no justification for paying this guy near the top of the market when you can replace that with a 12th of the cost when there's a lot of talented running backs coming out every single year, cost controlled, especially when you're talking about extensions for Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. These are those narrow margins that you have to operate in where you say, $8 million can be the difference between whether or not you can sign a guy who's one of those middle tier free agents at defensive line on the interior to help, or a linebacker to replace Jermaine Pratt, or maybe a veteran safety or corner to help solidify the secondary. So there's places where you can spend that money better. It's about allocation of resources. It's nothing against Mixon personally. It's just the production does not match the dollar value, and you can better spend those resources elsewhere.
I think that's the biggest point for me is the allocation of money. You know, we all know Joe Mixon's contract. The 7 running backs that are playing in the Super Bowl combined make the exact same amount of money Joe Mixon does as one physical player. Now, obviously, when you have Kansas City Chiefs, you have a massive contract with Patrick Mahomes. The Bengals are going to have something similar. Same thing with the Eagles. You know, they have a very, very great roster. You know, they can do that because their running backs, like I said, are making $2 million, $1 million, $3 million. And that the Bengals are at a point where that's how they have to operate. They have to pick and choose what's more valuable to your team, where you can find, cheaper guys, later round guys that can produce. And running back has forever and always been that position. And, everybody loves Joe Mixon. Nobody wants to see the guy go. But at the end of the day, like, that's just the common sense reality of the thing. When you look at the history of Super Bowl winners, running backs don't get paid a lot. There aren't a lot of teams that have won a Super Bowl where a running back has been their best player or even like one of their best offensive players. Obviously, there's your occasions, but still, it's just running back is too easy to replace, and paying everybody else is so much more important. It just, something's got to happen.
We see this with the franchise tag too. You can tell by the value of each franchise tag by position how the NFL values each position. And every single year we see these franchise tags for quarterbacks, wide receivers, defensive ends getting very large, and the running back tag seems to almost keep dropping to where it's not even worth a team really using. And if you look at Mixon's average per year in terms of his contract, he ranks the 7th most expensive running back on the average value. And if you're talking 40 or 50 running backs are qualifying for your stats, and he's ranking near the 40s and 50s in your elusive rating and these things where running backs separate themselves from the average running backs, then that's just, you're on complete opposite ends of the spectrums and you're not getting what you're paying for. So if people are so mad that they think Jonah Williams is overpaid, getting $12 million to be an average left tackle or a little bit below average, well, then I want to hear those same people going at Mixon for being as efficient as inefficient as he has been, and getting paid the 7th most at his position.
Yep. You guys make great points. I can't say what I want to say, but I'll say this. When we look at the offseason, if there was one move that you guys could make right now, outside of where I know you stand, Evan, outside of the running back position, what is a move that you would make right away? I could tell you mine. I would move on from Lyle Collins. That's me. I'd move on from Lyle Collins, and I would probably look to a Mike McGlinchey personally. That's just me.
Yeah.
I also could see some again, this is not from anyone that I have spoken to, but I could see a scenario in which some roster moves can make a guy like Mike Gesicki make sense for the Bengals. Just my opinion.
So the Bengals do have the cap space. Obviously, they've got, upwards of $40 billion in cap space for this upcoming season. Lyle Collins' cap hit as a starting right tackle is $9 million, and you're only saving $6 million by cutting him. So again, between Jonah, Carmen, and Lyle, especially with this season, with last season, everyone clamoring for offensive line depth. If you have these great values, you're not going to find. You might have to pay $7 million for a free agent swing tackle to do what Akeem Adeniji does. That to just be I understand. I'm not saying to play at that level. I'm saying
a lot less.
You want a swing tackle to come in off the free agent market. Good tackles don't make it to market.
Yeah.
So you get these teams like the Bears, like the Falcons that have all this money and just need good players that they can pay big bonuses to just to get to their cap floor.
Can I be real with you, Ev? I'm like, that's the thing about the state of jungle. We just talk. We say,
if you don't like him as a starter, just make him a backup and keep him on contract for another year. Lyle Collins.
There's no way, bro, he's going to be healthy, ready to start the season.
That's okay. Let him be a backup then.
At that money, though.
At $9 million, I mean, yeah, you're only saving $6 million. I mean, obviously, like I said, if you want to create money, you creating $7 million by Joe Mixon, which we talked about. We're not going to do. Okay. What about Tyler Boyd, man? $9 million. And look, we're coming back to this is the difficult part, right?
It's difficult conversations, man.
Teams have life cycles, right? Remember how gross everyone felt about Geno Atkins, about Carlos Dunlap. It doesn't feel good, but everyone knows that this is a business, and eventually everything comes to fruition where sometimes it doesn't make sense for both parties anymore. Tyler Boyd can get more money out of another team out there in free agency than he can get that the Bengals can give him. I mean, he basically got a bargain on him playing at slot receiver at his level for a couple years now. I think that's one of the spots that they can get cheaper, where they can get a younger guy with more speed, because that's one thing they want is another speed element, right? You can find that in the earlier parts of the draft to where you can find those guys to be in the slot and let Joe Burrow just make them look better.
And those slot targets could be replaced by a guy like Mike Gesicki.
Again, there's better ways to allocate resources. That's the big thing. If you're playing a rookie, $2 million instead of $11 million to Boyd. Again, if you guys are clamoring for offensive line depth, if you want to sign Mike McGlinchey to a $12 or $14 million contract, guys, it's him and Orlando Brown if they even make it to free agency. And you're talking 20 plus million a year for Orlando Brown to play left tackle and hope he's his elite form and not his just middle tier 16, 15th best tackle form that you're overpaying for. Again, if we're all worried about overpaying, then it's that and Mike McGlinchey. And if they don't make it, you're looking at a bunch of like guys like George Fant, like 30-year-old tackles that, you know, they bounced around. So the options are not plentiful for starting tackles. So if you want to get that money, like we said, if they're going to extend T. Higgins, if they're going to extend Joe Burrow, the Jamar Chase one may be put off a little bit just for sense of spacing things out a little bit. But if you really want to do that, if you want to keep this core together, if you want to bring Von Bell back, if you want to give Logan Wilson his extension, these concessions have to be made, just like they had to do it for Geno and for Carlos so they could eventually bring in DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
It's the life cycle of the team, guys. So we have to be real and realize where players are starting to get to the back end of their life cycle, where going to a better situation or a different situation could be better for both the player and the team.
Right. So with that, you know, in that respect, what do you think is a logical step forward, right? Because let's put yourself in the Bengals shoes, right? And you have to add, this is a real conversation you have to have. Okay. They're probably not going to cut Joe Mixon. That's probably not going to happen.
I would not anticipate that.
Right.
No. I would anticipate Lyle Collins or Tyler Boyd were more likely.
Now, where are you allocating that money to? Let's say Evan McPhillips gets the reins of the Bengals organization.
This is good.
Organization. Where are you allocating those funds to? Like real. Let's get real for a second.
Right.
Because you can't just cut Collins and not have a backup, right? You can't, because then at that point you're talking about identity as the starting right tackle.
Well, you've talked about potentially moving Jonah Williams to where he played at Alabama at right tackle, where he might be more comfortable, as some people say, and then try Carmen at left tackle, and then you can go after a guy like maybe a Fant in free agency and say, hey, do you want to be our swing tackle or one of these guys who are older who maybe wants to play with Joe Burrow and the Bengals? It's become a more attractive destination. And you say, hey, you'll have every bit of competition chance to compete with a Jackson Carman or to compete for that starting tackle job. And so they can, you know, lace in some incentives to help them get to that starting tackle money. So maybe that's the route you look for, where you try and get that. So you say, hey, we want to buy some competition with that money because that's what we can get. So I would personally be looking at positions like corner, safety, because we don't know that Dax Hill is necessarily ready for the spotlight. A lot of people don't believe so, right? So if you don't, then you want to try and get some insurance. We know how Lou loves his veterans, how he likes all the pieces to be able to fit together and move around and have that kind of flexibility, right? Like a Von Bell. Maybe they try and go for a free safety that is a veteran that they feel they can have in front of Dax Hill, do the versatility, understand Lou's scheme well, right? Maybe they say Cam Taylor Britt and Cheeto are great on the outside and Mike Hilton's good on the slot, but we'd like to go get, you know, a $6 or $7 million a year corner to just shore up that spot instead of Eli Apple for $3 or $4 million, right? That I would be going at these high value positions, edge, corner, safety, tackle, and then I would be drafting replacements for cheaper positions that we know based on draft history you can find in the draft in the middle rounds, like guard, defensive interior, linebacker. These are spots you can find in rounds 3, 4, 5, tight ends, especially in a deeper class this year. Go after younger talents, and whatever they don't hit in free agency, I'd like to see them get another young corner maybe to develop as their fourth corner. I would like to see them maybe go with another young edge rusher in a deep class and maybe round 2 and get that tight end in whatever rounds, corner, tight end, and defensive end, and sort of that kind of rounds 1 to 3 area. Go for those premium positions that will help you, that you can rotate in right now and develop. So that's kind of how I would approach it.
So in the first round, and join in, Logan, at any point in time. In the first round, what are you doing? Where are you targeting Evan McPhillips? You're Evan McPhillips, right. Duke Evan McPhillips Tobin. That's your name.
Free agency is for need. Draft is to get good players.
Absolutely.
Okay, that must be said. Okay, so even though I may sit here and say I would like to hit corner and edge in round 1, right? Because we know if you look at the production from round 1 versus rounds 2, 3, 4. Edge and corner are and quarterback, the most the biggest volume of good players is
right.
found in round one, period.
Right.
It's these guys who have those tools, right?
Right.
So that is my goal, is I want to hit one of those. If there's a run on corners or edge rushers, or they get somewhere where they don't feel comfortable, maybe you pivot to a guy like a Bowers or a Michael Mayer at tight end, where you say, one big playmaker, that could be a serious weapon for Joe Burrow. We feel good enough about a deep edge class or our corner depth to where we can get a fourth corner and let him be that guy and develop like Taylor Britt did. And it's a cheap guy at a position locked in for 4 or 5 years, to where that's going to become more important as hitting on these rookie contracts, because some of your big hits on rookie contracts, Logan Wilson, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, are all going to cycle off of that. So you're going to want to find these cheap options at premium positions. That's going to give you relief and flexibility later down the line.
I think the Bengals, like, one of the biggest questions, obviously we all know, like, they have an opportunity if they wanted to. They can go add a big name or two, but then you'd sacrifice a little depth. I think they're kind of looking at that right now. How do we want to approach it? Do we want to keep adding these, these $5 million guys here, and everywhere, just to make sure we have a little bit of protection in every area? Or do they think they really need, a big name edge rusher or another, Mike McGlinchey kind of guy? Like, they can go so many different avenues to improve their roster this offseason.
Right.
But this offseason is massive for this team. And we just sat here and all talked about how important it is, and they have to figure out the best way to go about it. They have to be smart. This offseason is absolutely massive for this organization.
I gotta be honest with you. I think that you have a window, right? And obviously with Joe Burrow, the window's as he says, the window's always open. But I personally like, to see the team actually go in, honestly, and stop playing games with this. I mean, they tried to upgrade the offensive line, right? It didn't work out that way. There's a reason why the Dallas Cowboys chose Terrence Still over Lyle Collins. Right now, obviously you have the injury issues, you got all that. But for once, I would like to see this team go in and say, you know what?
Yeah.
The way we did it did not work. And I'm talking strictly about the offensive line right now. I hear what Evan's point.
Mm-hmm.
When I say go in, I don't mean necessarily from a free agency standpoint, because you tried that and it didn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You tried that. To Evan's point, great tackles, good tackles don't make it to the open market. They just don't.
Right. There's always age, injury, some reason that they generally hit the market. And
Let's
they're not
trade.
doing that. Right.
Let's make a trade.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make a trade. Let's find a trading. Let's find a listen. The
It's
worst
a team
thing
like the
you
Texans that doesn't want Laramie Tunsil
right.
anymore. Like
the
that kind of
worst
thing.
you can
Right.
hear is no.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not do this song and dance though, right? Where we're hoping a tackle hits the open market, and we're doing. You talk about a team like the Saints, for instance, that might be looking to offload some of their players because they're in cap hell.
Yeah.
Maybe you call and you see what a Ryan Rand. Now I understand he's expensive. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But he's elite. There's a reason he's expensive, right?
Can I have one constraint?
Sure.
I'm not a huge fan. I like the idea of trading. I don't like the idea of trading for a guy on an expiring contract, because that holds you over a barrel in terms of leverage with that player. And if you have to franchise a left tackle a year or two in a row, that is going to be fully guaranteed.
Wow.
And that is going to be expensive, to where at the point you pretty much want him under contract. So I would want someone who's under contract still for another 2 or 3 years and not have to hit that signing bonus, the big upfront signing bonus that usually hits.
I'm sorry. To me, they need to sink their teeth in and say, you know what? At all costs, we are not going to let the offensive line
be the issue.
Be the reason why, if we don't win a Super Bowl or this upcoming year, or why we don't make it to a Super Bowl, we're not going to allow that to be a reason. There's a couple of things that I thought where it was ailing this team, right? The offensive line, obviously, big issue. I think that the cornerback core, I would say, played above expectations, considering, but I don't know how sustainable that is going into the next year. Same thing with the edge rush. Like you need another edge rusher there.
You need some juice down there.
You need someone else. I don't know, for whatever reason, Jeff Gunther, and I talked to some people in the organization. I don't know why Jeff Gunther didn't get more play time. I can't explain that, nor do I understand that. But I think you cannot go into another season saying, damn, our offensive line is the reason why we did not make it further.
Yeah, I have a point I want to bring. Or
sure.
Like hypothetical here. So you don't see the Bengals do it too much. We're talking about how important offensive line is. We're talking about, the money that comes with the offensive line in this and that, and how tackles don't make it to free agency. How do you feel if they traded up for who they think is their offensive lineman one? Does that suffice your needs?
I would 100%. You get nothing. It's like the conversation we were having the other night. If I am the Cincinnati Bengals, I would have traded Jesse Bates by the trade deadline, personally. Now you're going to let him walk, and what are you going to get in a third, a fourth round pick? I promise you that fourth round pick, while they're valuable, while third round picks are valuable, like you probably could have
draft
gotten
a running back, and then maybe
you probably could have got close
More
to
than
a
that.
first to a second for the guy. You probably could, because some team would have said, you know what? I could use a Jesse.
we need a
Bates.
talented player to just be good in our defense and help our young guys
Case in
develop.
point.
Right.
We are at the stage now where I'm looking squarely at Duke Tobin and company. I am. And I'm saying you guys have done a good job, but now it's time for you to do a great job. Now it's time for you to actually operate sort of like the Eric DeCostas of the world and actually utilize every single one of your resource. So that way, if they don't win a Super Bowl, you could say, we left no stone unturned.
Yeah.
That's what the conversation needs to be happening at Paycor Stadium right now.
I mean, look at all last year's Super Bowl winner, the Rams, obviously. Well, look what they did at the trade deadline. They added a bunch of guys off the street. The Eagles this year, Linval Joseph, Ndamukong Suh, in the middle of the season, all these people that they're just adding at important times. We haven't seen the Bengals do that yet. And, I'm not saying they haven't tried. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. But at the end of the day, they need, like you said, the worst people can say is no. And just as long you need to get out there and try a little bit harder, because people want to play for Cincinnati Bengals at this point. We kind of just talked about it. Getting people to come to Cincinnati at this point is probably the easiest it's ever been, and probably the easiest it ever will be.
Yes.
And if you're not going to take advantage of that window
Go
right now,
in.
when are you ever going to?
Go in 1 year.
Yeah.
Make this the year coming up that the organization says, you know what? We listened to State of the Jungle. We heard Evan McPhillips. We heard Logan Fulmer. We heard Malik Wright. You know what we're going to do? We're going to go in for 1 year. We're going to see how far we could really take this thing. If you go over the cap, so damn be it. You got a ring out of it. Ask the Rams, right?
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is the Bengals have gotten this far by utilizing what they had, the resources at their disposal, meaning drafting well and picking up players from teams that are cast-offs. But now, this is the year I want to see the Bengals. Don't be reckless necessarily. You don't have to be reckless to be smart. But
make an aggressive trade to acquire a good player like
the
Amari.
Ravens.
It doesn't have to be a first round pick.
Do
Do something like the Amari Cooper trade, where
Right.
it's a fifth round pick
Make a
for
phone
a guy
call.
that they want to get rid of anyways.
Make a phone call.
Right.
Different. Something we haven't
Make
seen
a phone
before.
call. There are so many players that are on, that are on the bubble with their roster, whether they because they just fell out of favor or what. Make phone calls, place phone calls. I don't know if you guys know that, but there's a stigma out there in the NFL that the Bengals are the hardest team in the NFL to trade with.
Yeah.
And it's because the Bengals always overvalue their players.
Mm-hmm.
They overvalue their draft picks. You guys know the story about the Bengals turning down multiple first-round picks from the Saints to draft Keyshawn Carter. We know these stories. We know the stories about the Bengals turning down picks for AJ Green the year before, they just let him walk.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing when they could have traded Andy Dalton, or fumbling the bag when they could have traded AJ McCarron for a second round. It's multiple. Listen, this has to be the year that the Bengals look at themselves and they say, you know what? We need to go in. We need to go in.
Restructure a contract or something. Give me
Do
some
something.
Trades, restructuring contracts, and being willing to cut players and eat a little bit of dead cap. We saw that with Trey Waynes, where that was kind of the first time they'd really done something that sizable in so long. So maybe that is a sign of things to come. But like you said, you definitely need to see them forge into that frontier that they have not explored that heavily outside of the BJ Hill trade.
So
I just pulled up the past trades. They haven't made a trade since August 30th of 2021. That was for BJ Hill.
And what was that? The
Fifth
Bengals
round
only
pick.
make trades when they're absolutely fleecing a team. When you're trading Billy Price and you're getting in exchange for Billy Price, BJ Hill and a 6th-round pick.
Right.
That was the
6.
most obvious one. Obviously it's one-sided, but it was very clearly a win for the Bengals.
And then they got Chris Evans, a 6th-round pick for Ryan Finley. Okay. BJ Finney for Carlos Dunlap. Christian Covington for Austin Calitro.
Yeah. Listen to all these big names we're out here getting.
The last one was the Cordy Glenn trade, and that was in 2018.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. So there was a span from 2011, correct me if I'm wrong, from 2011 to 2017, it says they didn't make a single trade.
That doesn't even faze me to hear that. That's
it was only
right.
that short.
Right. So no, I mean, he was right where you would see guys get brought back. I mean, at prices that maybe didn't make sense or were a bit above market because, like you said, they used to value their own guys for being hometown guys, putting in their dues, all the quote unquote, bring your work, your lunch pail, yeah, it would just and your hard hat and everything else. Like that was rewarded a lot before, and now I think they've kind of steered away from that. And I'd like to see, like you said, just more activity on the trade
And listen,
market.
we're not saying just make moves just to make moves.
No, don't deplete your resources.
Listen, I have a pretty good handling of how this team works. As you guys know, I'll be breaking a lot of news this offseason. I'm looking forward to it and things of that nature. But I think that it is time to now take that next step. We've taken the next step by spending more money, but now it's time to take the next step as an organization to where we are making smart moves, just placing phone calls, just trying to see, put feelers out there, right?
We don't even rare it is to be in the situation they're in and have as much money still as they do. Like, take advantage of it.
Take advantage. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like that. Then that's where the mentality has to be. If you ask me, it has to. You have to look at it and you have to say, you know what? We're gonna go out there and we're going to call the Saints to see what Orion Ramchick will call. I know you're not.
Oh no. I'm over here in my own head. I got something I want to throw at you in a second.
Laramie Tunsil. You want to see what it takes. Tom Brady's no longer with the Bucs. The Bucs are probably going to go on a little bit of a rebuild, right? Place some phone calls, right? Let's see what it would take. I know that there's a linebacker out there that might have fell out of favor.
I mean, teams like that who have sunk resources into what they've built, and if it didn't work out, like the Saints, like the Rams, like the Bucs, then now is probably that time you can say, hey, we can offer you some relief and give you some resources back. Can you maybe work something out where we can get one of those players? So one thing I wanted to throw at you that we were talking earlier about, how would you approach things? Like, what would you draft? What would you do? We talked about if Dax Hill is going to be your safety, maybe they want to get a veteran safety to go with it. What you think about a guy like Adrian Amos or Jordan Poyer for like $8-10 million a year? It's about their market value right now. You telling me they couldn't come in, especially with how much they've been playing dime, that they couldn't use one of those guys for $8 million? And that's
for sure.
That's Tyler Boyd right there. That's Joe Mixon. Like, however you want to justify it. Again, they still have $44 million in cap space, but these are just the things that you can do where you can shore up that secondary in a spot with a proven commodity and a veteran that can help you feel comfortable, where you don't have a giant question mark in Dax Hill that you're rolling out there in the spot where he really couldn't even get on the field most of the year.
Yeah.
So sorry, I saw
preaching.
that and I got all excited.
Right,
Go ahead.
You're preaching right now.
Right.
You're preaching. All I'm saying is let's play some phone calls and see what's out there. Right. You're looking to start your job. Start your career today as a broker. There's no better place than First Star Logistics. I say it almost each and every single show. They take us in as family, so to speak, since the ending of August, and they treated us like absolute family. I've gotten a chance to have unforgettable experiences, whether it be trip to Tampa, trips to even KC, getting to watch games with Ickey Woods and Jonathan India in the First Star Logistics suite. I think if you're looking to start your career today as a broker, there's no better place than First Star Logistics. You have the chance to make as much money as possible, and you get to work at a place with a great culture and a great atmosphere. Can't say enough great things. So if you're looking to start your career today as a broker, make sure you apply to First Star Logistics. The link is down in the description. Daniel, the favorite part of the State of the Jungle, which makes our show so unique, right? We are the only live in studio, all Bengals talk show. That's the point where we include the audience in the conversation, right? It's the point where we start answering some questions. So Daniel, take it away.
Our guy Chaston said, hey, Malik, any free agent names you are hearing that the Bengals are interested in right now?
Nothing yet.
It's a bit early, guys. Yeah, no,
starting out strong.
I like the enthusiasm, though.
I love it too, man.
But I'm over here looking at it too. So trust me.
But trust me, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah. Trust.
So Deja Vu has a good question about the punter. He said, can anyone punt the ball on the Bengals? So what's your guys' overall thoughts on the punter position for the Bengals? What should they do?
Man, not necessarily the Bengals, but obviously everybody has different opinions about punters. But if you want to look at how important a punter is, just literally look at the AFC Championship game. Tommy Townsend pinned the Bengals at the 5-yard line twice in a game, in crucial spots after crucial spots. What Drew Chrisman do? Punted it right to the
line drive down the middle.
Right there.
Line drive.
Got there in half
line
a second.
Drive down the middle. Nice and easy over the plate.
Yeah, they make a difference. You don't got to go break a bank for one, but they make a difference, and it was very clearly how much of a difference it made Sunday.
P. Colley asked, why is Dax Hill getting all this hate? And I don't think he's saying that you guys are hating on him, but I think from the regular Bengals fan. Why do you guys think so?
Played out of position.
Yes.
was asked to do a lot more man-to-man type coverage stuff.
That
Doesn't look
and
amazing.
Guys, secondary is one of the hardest positions, like outside of quarterback to like
Mhm.
transition to from college to the pros.
Mhm.
Like you could really dominate on your physical ability in college, whereas you're not getting that break. Everything is so much finer. The technique, the route running, the speed, everything. It takes a lot to adjust to. Played in multiple different positions like he was, it can be overwhelming for you. So I don't want to hold that against him. Just the same way you wouldn't have walked into this year going, Jackson Carman can be the left guard or left tackle of the future. You have question marks about Dax, and it would be irresponsible to go into the next season just pinning him as a starter and saying it'll be better. You don't have that luxury of figuring things out anymore. You have to be competitive, and you have to have solutions to where you have to have some sort of safety net or some sort of alternative plan there.
Cooking.
You can't just roll him out there and say, go ahead, we're going to figure it out. We've got the better scheme. You definitely need to have those contingencies in line.
If you guys had a guess, is Tyler Boyd a Bengal next year?
Well, I think I know your answer, Logan. What do you say?
I would say no. Somebody's got to go, and I don't know who it is exactly. We're gonna have to make some money somewhere. Well, I guess we don't have to, but we should. That's the logical thing that needs to be done. And I think when you have Jamar and you have T, Malik Guy, Trent Irwin, we've seen how little Tyler Boyd is even involved at this point. It doesn't mean he's not good. He's still a hell of a slot receiver, but his value is much higher on another team than it is on the Cincinnati Bengals.
I completely agree. We got a question from Greg. He said, Malik, is there any pass rusher in free agency that you think would help out the Bengals?
Cleveland Farrell.
Interesting.
That's
choice.
a name.
Interesting choice.
Cleveland Farrell. He knows Marion Hobby. Marion Hobby could bring out the best of him. You probably can get him on a cheap deal. He's one of those guys, and fits the mold, cast off, written off, former first-round pick. So undoubtedly has talent.
Yeah,
versatile.
Money aspect's huge there too.
Yeah,
if you can come in and he gives you above average production,
yeah,
at the price you're probably going to pay him, it works.
You could swap him all around that line too, and he would do great.
Yep.
Andrew Wood is asking about the Bengals free agents. He said, who do you guys think that the Bengals let go of?
I mean,
I think Lyle Collins.
I think.
You talking about
free agents? Yeah, that they let walk without. Yeah, I think Pratt, Bates, and Apple probably are gone. I don't know. Even if the money's right, do you think that they could spend $5 to $7 million on one of the many 28 to 30-year-old corners that ends up being out there? Like,
for sure.
That's what I'm saying. Would you feel better about that guy being your third or fourth corner, and would they have interest being the Bengals and playing for Lou and maybe trying to re-up on the contract?
I just think that a guy like Eli Apple consistently in Lou's system outperforms, right? What he's expected to do.
Do you feel like the extracurricular stuff is worth it?
I think they
that
don't,
to them.
I don't think they mind it too much personally. I think it's one of those things where we even saw Lou say it on the Pat McAfee show that they like when their guys sort of get in players' heads and stuff like that.
Do you think they just say, hey man, dial it back 20% and
it's just weird with Eli.
Keep being you, but
Eli specifically is weird because he wasn't brought here to play as much as he did ever. He walked into tough situations and performed, so it's again, we talk about these antics. Are other teams going to give him a lot of money, or would we rather just stay for the Bengals? Eli is the most interesting free agent we have. Yeah. So, I mean, if I could see him not really being wanted by anybody else and he comes back here a little cheaper he did this year. I mean, he's not your number one corner, but
to me, I think he cashed in this year. He got paid $4.5 million, bro.
Yeah, and he shouldn't get paid more.
And
but that's
clearly, you said he went to free agency and he came right back and came for that $4 million deal because the market was not hot enough for him. So whether someone after the year he's had and maybe a organization that doesn't feel as comfortable with all the extra stuff he does, then maybe there's not that value or that demand to where he says, I want at least that $4 million and no one's going to give it to you except the Bengals, and maybe they can use that to their advantage and say, hey, we'll give you 2.5, 3 fully guaranteed.
I'd do that.
You're only getting older. I really think it's up to them. But I mean, you've got guys 30-year-old guys like Marcus Peters, Bradley Roby, James Bradbury for the Eagles.
I would love Marcus Peters on the Bengals.
I'm just saying, these are guys you're going to have to pay for, but at corner is a spot you definitely don't mind doing that. But there are guys like Jonathan Jones from the Patriots, Anthony Brown from Dallas that these are guys who you can have for $7 million, $6 million. So instead of Cheeto goes down or Cam Taylor Britt goes down, and then you have Eli Apple coming in, you have one of these guys who you feel have more experience and a little more sound in coverage, and you don't feel as thin at corner at that point.
Malik, did you say Marcus Peters?
Marcus Peters, I love him.
I like it. I like it. So I want you guys to put you guys' draft cap on for a second. They're asking about the first round pick for the Bengals. Do you guys think that the Bengals should trade the first round pick for a player, trade back, or make the pick?
I like the idea of having that 5th-year option for any premium position that they get, because
Depends what
that
you're gonna
is it's going to be it could be important down the line to where maybe that is a value if you hit on that pick, if you hit on a corner or an edge rusher or a tackle that develops in what usually is about 2 to 3 years in the NFL, then that is going to be a great value for a team that will need to get creative with how they structure their bonuses and their payouts to where, again, that could give them $4 to $8 million extra for the last 2 years of their contract, that they're getting surplus value that they can spend on other positions or spend on converting things. You talked about restructuring contracts. When you do that, you're converting the base salary to a signing bonus, which means you have to pay it outright. That's a lot easier to do when you have an extra $8 million because your rookie corner is playing at an elite level and you're not paying him $20 million a year, or your wide receiver is playing at Tyler Boyd's level, but you're not paying him $11 million a year. You're paying him 1 or 2 or 3, right? So that's kind of the idea of that surplus value and where you can get that value and how it can help you later when you're trying to create space through either converting that signing bonus or structuring contracts in the ebbs and flows. So you have spaces to fit free agents when, like, let's say in 2 years when DJ Reader, and then the year after when Trey Hendrickson's up, and we kind of go through this cycle again of a new kind of defense to where I think you talked about investing in the offense, and I think that's a great use of resources because we see offense is consistent, whereas defense can kind of be year to year. There's a lot of fluctuation between interceptions, sacks. These are things that fluctuate a lot year to year and don't have the consistency. There will be a time maybe where this looks like a Drew Brees or a Peyton Manning, where the offense has to carry the team and the defense has to be good enough, has to be average, right? Fortunately, they're not at that point right now, but it's definitely something to be considering when building this team for the foreseeable future.
I think that this defense has been more consistent than our offense throughout the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And the defense has been more consistent than our offense. But I think when we talk about the offense, I think it goes back to the same old, the offensive line, right? The offensive line is always the reason why the running game isn't able to get going, or, the holes aren't opened up in the running game, or Joe doesn't have enough time for this or that and third. I feel like if the Bengals finally just go all in, I mean, really go all in on the offensive line, I don't see this team not reaching its goals. I don't. I think the focus going into the offseason is you need to do whatever it takes to make this a more balanced attack on a consistent level, right? And continue to protect Joe Burrow, honestly.
Which new starter do you guys think is going to have a bigger impact, Dax Hill or Akeem Davis-Gaither?
Akeem Davis-Gaither.
I was going to say good impact or bad impact?
Well, yeah. What impact are you talking about?
Probably.
I was going to say Akeem Davis-Gaither. I feel like, again, you're talking about a guy who's had years to learn the system and gradually get into that and work with Lou on playing to his strengths. And Lou's had time to learn all that. Like we talked about, Dax kind of got moved around a little bit into spaces that maybe he wasn't entirely comfortable with. And that's not anything to really hold against him. It's just, it's a fast game and it's a lot harder than playing at college. So he could show out and be better, but yeah, I definitely agree that Akeem Davis-Gaither is more likely to be the impact player for them.
I agree there too. I mean, I love Akeem Davis-Gaither, but just going back to Dax Hill, I think, he's going to be better than I feel like a lot of fans are expecting at this point, just because, like Malik said, he played out of position majority of the time, and that's why people don't like him. Dax Hill probably got 10 to 20 snaps at true safety sets all year, if that. So it's like your thoughts on Dax Hill, they're fair, they're justified, but your thoughts of Dax Hill as a safety are unknown. He did not play safety enough for you to really be like
slot corner and outside corner.
He didn't play safety enough for you to be like, oh wow, we're screwed. Maybe he does suck. Maybe he's great. But at the end of the day, you just don't know.
He had 82 snaps at slot corner. He had 19 at wide corner and 20 at free safety. and then 25 in the box. So majority of his snaps came probably 60-70% came in the box or at slot corner. So
Yeah.
again, he's not Mike Hilton, he's not Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. That's not really what he's being asked to do or what he should be asked to do in the NFL.
I agree.
Good question here from our guy Gavin. He said, "What are our potential draft targets for us this year?"
I mean, it's a little too early still for draft
Right.
targets just yet, Gav. But I ask us that question about
I think
few
after the
weeks, yeah.
combine,
After
is a
the
great time
combine,
because
I-
that's when so many people start talking and sharing
And
ideas, and you kind of get people kind of
you have
leaking some
boots,
stuff
and
out.
we'll have boots on the ground. The State of the Jungle crew, we're talking about doing a show live from Indy. I know Daniel and I be covering it, but we're talking about doing a show live from Indy. And who knows? Maybe we'll grab some people, some coaches or something like that. You never know who we might grab to be on State of the Jungle impromptu show, if you will.
Sean's asking, "Are we going to get any free agent?" He said emojis, but probably gifts this year. And I'm assuming he's talking to you, Mike.
We'll see.
Our guy Keith is asking, "What current Bengals free agent do you guys think will be back for next year?"
Von Bell.
Yeah, I think Von Bell is probably the priority with Jesse Bates walking. You don't want that safety room to get even younger than
Yeah.
it is already.
Von Bell is by far my biggest priority. Like, you can't afford both your safeties to walk,
Right.
especially when you're going to roll out Dax Hill, like we just said. Like, you need some foundation, some similarity in the scheme. Rolling out two completely new safeties, not a very good recipe for success.
Right.
So overall, what are the Bengals' positions of need heading into this offseason?
Punter,
You never have enough corners.
corner,
I don't
another
care.
edge rusher,
Right.
offensive tackle.
And then it's just depth at that point. I mean, you can use a tight end starter.
Yeah,
potentially,
no,
with what
no,
you're gonna do
no,
with first. Maybe it's Mike
Right.
Gesicki, maybe it's not. But then it comes down.
Maybe it's Logan's guy, Darnell Washington.
don't get me started.
Talk
Yeah.
to us about Darnell really quickly.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
he's about to gush.
good-
Put the
how
camera on
long we
Logan.
got?
He's about to
Don't get me
gush.
started, bro. I love Darnell Washington. And it's weird. I don't like the draft. I love tight ends. For all of you that do not know that, I will watch every tight end that is draft eligible this year. I just will. But for Darnell Washington, him specifically, the thing that makes him so, you look at why the Bengals drafted Drew Sample a few years ago. He was a great blocker. The production offensively wasn't there. But they knew he was a great blocker. Darnell Washington is miles better than Drew Sample at blocking. Darnell Washington is probably one of the best blocking tight end prospects we have ever seen. And when you look at the Bengals run their offense, you need to block as a tight end. We look at the offensive line struggles. We look at the run game struggles early in the year. Having an elite run blocking tight end is just unbelievably important for this team. And we haven't truthfully had that yet. And then, that's just a run blocking. Like, I think if worst case scenario, if Darnell Washington for some reason absolutely sucked at tight end, like, he could just put on 30 pounds to go play right tackle and be not the best, but like, he could do it. Like, that's the kind of athlete he is. And that's just his blocking ability. That doesn't even factor in the fact that he's 6'7", 270, runs a 4.7 40, and has a 35-inch vert, jumping over people, hurdling over people. He can be used in so many different ways that the Bengals, kind of want from your tight end. He can just sit there and block, or you can throw a jump ball to him. You can do anything you want with him. He's just a mismatch problem. And you're going to add that in between Chase and Higgins. It's like,
You want to help your run game, add a nasty run blocker like that at the tight end
Exactly.
spot that you can put in line. Yeah. No, it's I like the fit for sure.
We've got a couple more. Our guy Pedro said, "If you guys were the Bengals in the draft, would you guys draft a wide receiver like a Jordan Addison, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, a Quentin Johnson if they're available?"
I don't think they touch one of the first.
I was gonna say I don't know if you need to prioritize that much as much as it's not wide receiver is not like corner and edge and quarterback in the sense that you are gonna find a higher volume of the elite guys at the top end, but you can find the very good guys in the second, in the third, in the fourth. We've seen this with Boyd, we've seen this with Stefan Diggs, we've seen this where you can find these guys to fit these unique roles that you have carved out. So they can find a speedy slot guy in the third round that can come in behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And with Joe Burrow's accuracy and his ability to pinpoint a pass to where he can get the most out of the ability of a receiver to get yak after because of his accuracy, then you don't need to overspend in terms of resources, both in money and free agency or in draft capital to get that guy. You can definitely take those swings on those positions where you need some of that higher end talent like defensive end or corner. And again, it goes back to you want to try and target free agency a lot like the Bengals did last year, where they went after the offensive line with a bunch of quality middle tier free agents, knowing they needed to be average at most all the spots, right? Secondary is very similar in the way that it is a unit, right? If you have one weak link, it is going to be targeted, especially in the playoffs, very heavily. So that is something you want to get average at least in all of those spots. So it's important to consider that positional value and also the cost effectiveness of doing that. So again, don't pigeonhole yourself into saying we need to get an edge, we need to get a corner. Get those middle tier guys that you can get in free agency, like a safety or a corner, and then you can kind of fill the gaps with just good players that fall to you.
If we are going to draft a receiver, I just have 2 requests. 1, be fast, and 2, please be able to return a punt. I can't watch Trent Taylor return punts anymore. I just refuse to do that.
Our guy Akila said, Malik, why does it feel like you don't think Hayden Hurst is coming back this next?
No. I do not think. I think
Gesicki is just a favorite target of yours. No, it's nothing against Hurst.
Gesicki is just a favorite target of mine, and I think he would take the offense over the top, and I think he would kill 2 birds with 1 stone if the Bengals wanted to save money and move on from Tyler.
Like, let's be honest about what Hurst is, guys. He was a $3 million a year tight end, right? Like, I mean, that's there wasn't a lot of competing market for them, and so it's not because like he's bad or anything. It's just that you can find other value there where you can have more juice or untapped potential in a guy like Gesicki.
Definitely like Hayden Hurst, though.
Right. You know what Hurst is, and Joe Burrow really gets the most out of him again. And also the scheme did a good job of that. And kind of like we saw the tight end little wheel route up the sideline with Jamar Chase and the eye candy in front of it. They schemed a lot of that stuff open for him, and he did a good job of catching balls and like just playing hard. But you can get that for a lot of tight ends. So
I think you'll see how you'll know how the organization feels about tight ends after this offseason. Like, if you're just going to keep rolling out, signing guys, you got Mitchell Wilcoxes of the world, your Devin Asiasi's of the world too. If they just keep not prioritizing it, there's, that's just by design.
If we all can do us a huge favor, give this video a like, and also if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on the road to 4K. We're trying to hit 4K. You guys can do us a huge favor. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate your support that you guys give us each and every single week. Let's keep the conversation rolling, though, Daniel. Let's keep the questions coming.
Blake said, I've seen a lot of buzz about Tyson Anderson. Do you think he would have a chance in this defense if the right pieces aren't brought back?
Oh, absolutely. If the right pieces weren't brought back. But I just think that you don't want to find out right now.
You don't find out.
I think Von Bell has to be a priority. You want Von Bell to be able to, he's the enforcer on this defense, right?
You definitely don't want to roll Dax Hill out there with another rookie to play and lose scheme in both safety spots, especially with inverted cover 2 and box responsibilities and how they kind of switch coverages up and really muddy the picture after pre and post snap. Again, we talked about how hard it is for a rookie to play in the secondary, let alone like guys with that lack of experience. Yeah. So it'd be nice to have a backup guy again, whether they sign a corner or sign a safety. You'd like to see him draft a younger guy at some point in the draft to just fill in a little bit behind that on depth
100%.
And develop a guy, but you don't want to count on a rookie in either starting spot.
Right. You want to allow them to develop.
Right.
John is asking about Jackson Carman. Do you guys think he's done at guard and is going to stick at tackle moving forward?
I would say what you saw at tackle was monumentally better than what you saw at guard.
Right.
So I say, keep letting him compete. And again, it's got to be competition. You can't just hand him that job. So.
Exactly.
Yeah, the last time he was handed something, he didn't even win it. So you need to just keep playing how he is.
Ty Huntley said, am I wrong for being terrified of losing Jermaine Pratt? Seems like he's always the one making those game-saving plays.
Yeah. He ain't got to be here.
I mean, I think that Akeem Davis-Gaither can fill that role. I really do.
He's just such a good athlete, bro. Akeem is such a good athlete. I mean, obviously Pratt made all these plays that we want to see. Credit to Jermaine Pratt. He's a hell of a football player. But we talk about the allocation and making sure the right people are getting paid. We can't pay Jermaine Pratt the amount of money he's going to want. And it's honestly, for me, it's just as simple as that. That's all it is.
I don't want to overvalue the same way I wouldn't overvalue one game. I don't want to overvalue one season of good production in a contract year, especially.
Yeah.
We've seen this a lot where there is credence to the contract year production bump that people tend to get.
Yes.
And if you look at it, he had a 54 or lower PFF grade in his first 3 seasons and then jumped up to a 78. And he played well this year, especially in coverage. But while coverage is valuable, we know that coverage is not sticky year to year.
Mm.
There's not a lot of consistency or predictiveness year to year. It's hard because you have to have those opportunities to make the plays by quarterbacks throwing you errant passes or trying to target you in coverage, and then you have to perform at the same time. So it can be tough, especially for linebackers. So you don't want to overrate one season and then pay him for his peak play. Like you wouldn't want to pay Jesse Bates 18 million a year because he had the one really elite season and then some other ones that have been it's felt less than impressive. So it's the same scenario with him. I'm very grateful for what he's done, very grateful for the production. Memories that'll last a lifetime.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Sean asked, do you guys think the Bengals have communicated with potential defense coordinators knowing that Lou is going to be leaving?
I don't think that's something
Maybe
you do before he
leaving.
walks.
Malik, this is from Greg. He said, do you think that the Bengals draft a 3 tech or go after one in free agency?
Well, they've tried actually to I appreciate the question, Greg, too. I appreciate you always supporting too, my man. They've tried the last 2 offseasons to add Jaron Reed. So I think they're going to continue to try to add 3 techs. I also think that they might have been impressed enough with what they've seen from Zach Carter. Zach Carter did impress in spots, but if you can, if you can get someone on,
He's upgradable.
He is upgradable, 100% for sure.
Man, Zach Carter was really bad to start the year. I'm so glad he came along. It's a tough transition playing in the trenches in the NFL.
Can't get worse than Tyler Shelvin.
Man, he was really bad at the beginning of the year, but he ended really good. Cam Sample struggled a little bit too. He came along. Joseph Tsai, he came along. The progress the back end of the defensive line room has made was amazing to see.
God, I like that Deron Payne. That's that's nice.
Yes,
that's
nice. That Deron Payne, man. I'm trying to tell you. We had that conversation yesterday too, man. I would love that.
Now, if you could get him or like a Javon Hargrave, if he doesn't stick around.
I see Javon Hargrave seems to be a popular name in
everyone likes to pull up the free agent tracker and look at the top names, and a lot of times these guys don't leave the team because they either get retained or they work something out, especially if you see like these teams that go to the Super Bowl. Maybe they want to stick together and keep the chemistry together, and they take less, or they convert stuff into signing bonus. So they say instead of 14 million with 7 guaranteed, we'll give you 10 straight up guaranteed. Will you stay that in that way?
Right.
And so those things tend to get worked out, but there may be still guys out there like is Fletcher Cox, if he doesn't go back with the Eagles, does he retire? Does he just say
he's retiring?
Right. So then if he's retiring, if he's not staying, then I think the Eagles keep Javon Hargrave.
Right.
So it'll play itself out a little bit. But
yeah,
if you're not looking at top Javon Hargrave, I definitely like the Deron Payne one.
Oh yeah, I love
You ain't gonna sell me on it.
Get us started.
You know what I'm saying?
I know, that one would, oh man, that'll take it over the top for real.
Right.
Chasten asked for each of you guys, who's one player that you guys are higher on than most? I don't know if he's talking about the
Mike
Bengals.
Gesicki for me.
On the Bengals or just like
Mike
agency?
Free agency.
Free agency, Mike McGlinchey, Mike Gesicki. Give me all the mics. Give me all of them. Give me what did not say? All I need is one mic. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, it's a little tough for me. I love Deron Payne a lot. I don't know if like the Bengals would necessarily attack these positions. Again, we talked about it yesterday. The Bucks corners, Jamel Dean, Sean Murphy Bunting, I am a very big fan of. Again, I don't necessarily think the Bengals go in that direction per se, but I do like their game a lot.
All right.
We want to thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of State of the Jungle. Make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate your support that you guys bring us on a consistent basis. We will not be live next week only because I will be in Arizona. Me and Daniel will be covering the Super Bowl this year. But we will be back. The State of the Jungle crew will be back throughout the offseason as we'll be breaking down this offseason. We'll literally go by position group. And obviously we have our free agency shows, NFL Combine. We have so much stuff to look forward to this offseason. I want to appreciate you guys so much for supporting us on the show on a consistent basis. Again, we will be coming live to you all throughout the offseason, getting you guys locked and loaded again as your only live in studio Bengals talk show. We appreciate your support. Give this video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Everybody have a great night and Hoo day.
Hoo day.